Hi guys, welcome to a review on the Eibach Pro Kit. I recently decided to finally pull the plug and install a set of loading springs on my 2021 Polo GTI AW. Looking at the car in its factory ride height just got on my nerves so bad. Having a GTI and having it look like it was walking around on stilts annoyed me just so much. So the loading springs that I decided to choose was the Eibach Pro Kit. Now Eibach offers two different sets of loading springs for the Polo GTI AW specifically. The first one being the Eibach Pro Kit and the second one being the Eibach Sport line. The Eibach Pro Kit is a much more of a subtle drop in comparison to the Sport line. The Sport line is going to offer you a lot more tuck. And the Sport line unfortunately might mean you may need to actually upgrade your dampers, whereas with the Eibach Pro Kit, which I'm running at the moment, you can actually run your stock dampers, which means that's not an extra expense. All you're gonna have to do is spend some money on getting the loading springs, and that's it. Whereas in comparison to the Sport line, you're gonna have to spend the extra money to go and actually get your dampers replaced as well. There is also a possibility that you may actually throw some error codes up, especially if you have the optional Sport Select suspension selected on your car. Now the error codes are definitely something you can get rid of, but you're going to need to actually get some software done in order to code out those errors. With the Eibach Pro Kit, you don't actually have to do any of that. You just pretty much stick your springs on, get them installed by a professional installer, and that's it. You won't get any error codes, nothing of the sort. Because the Eibach Pro Kit is such a subtle drop, you don't actually have to do any software, you have absolutely no error codes, and that's the one thing that I absolutely love about the Pro Kit itself. It's so simple, there's not really that much that you actually need to do. All you need to do is get your springs installed. Now in terms of the drop with the Eibach Pro Kit, in front you're getting about 20 to 25 millimeters, and at the back you're getting about 30 millimeters, which is not that much, but I mean the car looks pretty good for such a subtle drop. The Eibach Pro Kit, since it's quite a subtle drop, you are not actually getting that much of a drop, but in comparison to the factory gap here, you're gonna have about 2 fingers that you can fit in there. So you can see over there I've got about 2 fingers in there, so it's still drivable. It's easy to daily drive as well. Taking a look at the back, that's where you get your bigger drop. So over here, previously on the factory stance, you could actually get your whole foot up in here. Now you're pretty much 1 finger. You could try 2 fingers, but it doesn't quite fit. I'm barely getting 2 fingers in, but that's if I'm going in at an angle. Now before you could actually, the gap was about that big, which was just crazy. It just does not look good on the GTI. Having a more subtle drop also allows better daily drivability. I've just found it to be a lot easier to daily drive the car still. Yes, the car is much lower, but it's not so low that daily driving becomes impossible. If you have a look in the front, you can see that I've actually got a splitter on in the front, and really there is still a bit of a gap. Yes, it is a little bit challenging to get over speed bumps and things like that, but in general it's really not that bad. The Eibach Pro Kit is a very, very subtle drop again, and that's what makes it such a good package in terms of loading springs for this specific car. In fact, I would honestly recommend Eibach Pro Kit for any other vehicle, any other performance vehicle in general, because it's a much more subtle drop. You're not going to get any rubbing in terms of your tires touching the inner sides of your fenders. None of that. You're not going to get any fender cuts on your wheels. Absolutely nothing like it. Daily drivability is the one really good thing about the Eibach Pro Kit, and I would highly recommend it for that one specific reason. The Eibach Pro Kit is also not that bad in terms of price. You're looking at about, in general, roughly about between 5,500 to 6,000 Rand, which is not that bad if you are comparing to a lot of other options, especially if you're going to go with coilovers or anything like that. Coilovers, sometimes a good quality set of coilovers might cost you roughly about 10 grand. So it's really not that bad on price as well. So I would definitely go the route of Eibach Pro Kit. I'm definitely happy with the choice that I've made in terms of the loading springs. I didn't want a drop where my wheels are going to sit inside my fenders, nothing like this. Is a daily driven car, so I want to be able to drive it on every type of road. And in South Africa we have various different types of roads, and you want daily drivability from your car as well. In terms of ride comfort, especially while driving, it's pretty good, it's pretty decent, especially in comfort mode. Normal mode, you are pretty much getting quite a soft damping setting, and it's really not that bad. It's just once you hit a pothole, prepare for a shock to run right through the car. It is really, really harsh. And sport mode does get a little bit stiff. It's not that bad. I may be exaggerating it a bit, but it's really not that bad. Sport mode is where it gets a bit stiff, but you can actually obviously switch back to normal mode, damp your settings down a bit. This also depends on if you do have the Sport Select suspension on your vehicle, or what they sometimes refer to as adaptive chassis control, but it's really not that bad. Daily drivability on most roads, it's pretty good. It's just you're gonna have to be really, really careful. Now when I say you have to be really, really careful, I'm only referring to those really, really rough roads where you have potholes or the road goes in a bit, things like that. That's where you're going to need to be really, really careful. And the possibility of scraping, I guess it just comes with the territory of having lowering springs. There's really not much you can do. It's either you go low or you don't go low at all. And I would personally prefer this stance, the way the car looks right now, than the way the factory stock stance is. I just don't like the way it looks from factory. It's just not my taste. And I prefer for a car like a GTI to look like a GTI. It needs to be low. That's what makes it a performance car. The thing that I really love about having the Eibach Pro Kit is the fact that the car seems a lot more planted. It seems a lot more attached to the ground. Your level of grip is heavily improved, and just the way the car rides through the corners, the way it handles, that is enough for me to say yes to going low. And especially with the subtle drop, Eibach Pro Kit is definitely the way to go.